Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, I a little background. I am right now I'm running sales for a little company called Groundbreaker.
Yep.
I actually start probably by the time this goes out, I will be running sales for a company called Visual Skews. Um, and I started my career working for Snap 36 just as an account executive and moved my way up to run sales there. We did have an exit at the company about a year and a half ago. And that's kind of how I got where I'm at now.
Yeah. And why'd you get into leadership?
I have always liked working with other people and getting, there's something fun about working to get other people to replace you. It's something that I was fortunate enough in my career to have a really good, boss and mentor who is the CEO of Snap 36 that, made me want to do the same for other people within my space. And so, the strategy side of it, all that stuff's a lot of fun for me. But the real piece is like working with the guys and gals that I've been able to kind of bring up underneath of me and, kind of see what they've been doing over the years.
And that motivated you more than the financial success of winning deals
Yeah,
on
I
your own?
mean, yeah, that's the hardest part about going into sales management, right? Is that, it's
You
one of the few
get on the
jobs that as you
crack
go up
pipe
the
and it's
ladder,
hard to
you
get
make
off.
less money.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously there's a little more stability, but you lose some of that fun of the chase. I'm fortunate in that when I was at Snap and where I'm headed, I'm a player coach. So I do still get to chase down some of my own business on top of working with other people, which is kind of the best of both worlds as far as I'm concerned anyway.
And so you have your own territory or your own, what, book of accounts or?
So basically the way that we had it set up, and I'll kind of refer to had because that's my last kind of position. The new one I'm still setting up,
Yeah.
but we operated everything by industry. So it wasn't a very regional business. And so really nationwide could work. Technically, we could work overseas as well, but it didn't really make a lot of sense. So um, what we did is by breaking it down into industries, it allowed us to become mini influencers as part of what we did, which was at the time was 360 photography.
Yeah.
We became the experts in each of those industries. So it allowed us to expand a lot faster than potentially being regional. And then we were all based in Chicago. So that
Yeah.
made life a little easier too.
And it wasn't kind of schizophrenic where you're like, or did you time block or how did you manage it?
Yeah, it was really, I mean, I worked a lot, if we're all honest with ourselves. Like,
That's one way.
like there, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not always the best with time management. So, but yeah, a lot of it was really working on scheduling things out and making sure that I made time for my team. So we all had our standing meetings, we had our weekly meetings, and then there was always some time on my calendar that if they needed something, they could come and ask. I took a desk that was in the middle of the office, so people could always come up and talk to me, which had its ups and downs. But over time, you know, I tend to lead with a the mindset of try it. At the end of the day, in sales, the worst you can do is lose the deal. And a lot of times, if it's the really big ones, you're working with me anyway, so we're kind of hand in hand. So it's like try things out, sees what's going to work because there's no one good way to do everything. Everyone has to kind of put their own little spins on things, or it won't feel genuine. And it won't be genuine because you're trying to replicate somebody else, especially when you're thinking of enterprise sales. It's not like it's a cookie cutter type thing. You're custom building solutions for people. And so, a lot of it was when I trained people, it was make a choice or if you're going to come to me with a question, come to me with an answer. And then we'll back
An
into
option.
whether that's going to be right.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the time to invest. And I kind of, whenever I would hire people, I laid them down and said that and got them, here's my management style and it's not for everybody. And I fully accept that. It's very, I don't want to say hands off, but it's very like try and we will work on it as we go to make things because, we're trying to, there were times in the company that we're trying to change the tires on a moving vehicle. So everyone's just running. And, they're at the end of the day, I'm not unwilling to work 12-hour, 14-hour days, but there are only so many hours in a day that you can work, especially in sales, because you can only be calling from certain hours.
Yeah.
So
And
that was how I did it.
well, I mean, that's a good point because certainly there are steps. There's a kind of a process. And I think people confuse process with a rigid step-by-step regimen as opposed to it's just the evolution. This is what has to happen to get a deal. How you get it, right?
Mhm.
You're
Yeah,
the
I mean,
chef.
it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but there's certain pieces you have to hit every time. Like
Yeah.
you have to do this, you have to be here, and you have to be how you get there. The journey it can be a little bit varied, you know.
Now, a
I
lot of
think
people don't like that. Some people love it, but a lot of people like just tell me what to do and I'll do it. But that's not sales.
that's especially working in, I've always worked for smaller startup style companies. That's never going to work because, to be honest, even those marks sometimes change as the company evolves, as the industry evolved. I mean, we had the pleasure of building an industry and a company at the same time. When we started doing 360 imaging, it wasn't a thing. People didn't really do it, and now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so we had it was a blast doing it, but it was still a lot of work. And you're right, there's so many times I've talked to other sales leaders that want to be like, they've got to do this, and it becomes robotic. And it's like, there are things that sell that way, but at the same time, if you can do it that way, you probably don't need salespeople.
Right. You just need people.
Like, yeah, you just need warm bodies to answer phones,
It's more
or
service than
some
it is
AI.
selling.
I mean, more and more these days, those AIs are replacing those jobs that don't require solution building, and that's the piece of, that I love about enterprise sales is it's still solutions. You're solving unique problems every day for people, and I can't tell you how many times you're driving and all of a sudden you think of an account and you're like, wait, what if we did this? And then you're like calling people and you're like, okay, we need to move this and try this, and you're on the way to the presentation and you've rethought the whole thing because you're like, you know I was trying to put them into the wrong box. And
Well, I
that's
also like that come to me with either solutions or options so that we can talk it through and show me that you thought about it.
yeah,
Because
if you
because
don't.
when they don't and you say, well, do this and it doesn't work, whose fault's it?
Right. Well, the next time they run into that issue, I want them to be like, oh no, this was the right way. Like, I know there are a couple of ways to do it. This way worked last time. Let's stick with it. Or I wish I would have done it slightly different last time.
Right.
Where if I tell them what to do every time, they're just going to keep coming back to me, and I don't have the time as a player coach in a startup to do that.
Because that part, that thinking, that's really critical.
And so many people don't want to. I mean, there were
Right.
definitely, it wasn't a fit for everybody,
Yeah.
and I fully admit, and that's why I'm always transparent. I have a relatively unique style, I guess. I like to think that it's not all that unique, but it feels unique sometimes to some people because they're so used to, being in school, right? There's a right answer, a wrong answer, and you ask the teacher.
Right.
In this instance, it's like you've got to figure it out. Like there are some questions that straight up don't have answers. Like, give me your best thought at one, and if it makes sense, we're gonna run with it and see what happens. And don't be afraid to be wrong, because fail fast. It's like the same thing in sales, right? Lose the deal as early as you can. If you're gonna lose it fast
Well,
and move on to the next one.
because it's critical to teach that personal responsibility that they can everyone can ask for help, everyone can bounce ideas off, but at the end of the day it's that rep is responsible for that deal,
Mm-hmm.
and they may take your advice or they may ignore it, but
Yeah, and they get to do that.
the outcome is owned by them.
Yep. And giving them that power too, I've found, really builds people up too, because then they have the confidence when they walk into a room. They don't need to kind of, stand by you and make sure that they're getting your approval the whole time. They're like, no, no, he trusts me. And you give them a little rope, and sometimes you're going to pull it back a little bit. But it's an ever learning game because each person's a little bit different. But making people think things through is something that, you know, there are some people who operate in the world of like, well, I know the things, so I want to be the bearer of that knowledge. I'm like, I don't want to own anything. Like, like you do it.
And how did you hire for this?
So we hired primarily within our personal networks. like I said, I was fortunate enough to work for Jeff Hunt, who knew everybody at the time. And
I know
so,
Jeff Hunt.
you know Jeff Hunt, actually.
We
Yeah.
worked together in the 90s. Yeah.
So like I said, he literally knows everybody. So that made life a lot easier at times. But we interviewed a lot, and I had people do pre-interviews. And then when I would sit down with people, it was by the time they would, there was obviously some skills things that you have to know and things like that. But having the questions, and for me, it was just like, hey, why do you want to do this? Like, and if they give you a canned answer, it's like, well, then you're looking for a a job that's going to tell you what to do every day. Like, get unique in it. And so my interview process was always very personal, which a lot of people I've learned as I've looked for different jobs and things, they don't like that because there's the belief that personality isn't the reason you hire people. But I would argue that in sales, it is, because you're buying and selling people. Like, at the end of the day, people are buying you. And so if you have a really off-putting personality, you can be the smartest person in the room. But if you want to make sure everybody knows that you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably not going to be great at sales. And that's
Well,
kind of the operation that I've worked under.
yeah, because too many, and people are raised, you go through school, college, it's about what you know.
Mm-hmm.
But sales, what you know is just a small part of it.
It's how you approach it. I mean, you can all have the same knowledge, but if people don't think of you when they have a problem, especially again in enterprise solutions and things like that, then you haven't really done sales. All you've done is you spit back something that they could
Service.
have read somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, if they can find the knowledge, then you're not really adding a whole lot to the table except for being a Rolodex for them. Where if you're actually sitting down and getting critical with them and genuinely interested, or at least making them feel that way. Sometimes it's harder to be genuinely interested in some industries, but having those passions though make you more genuine. And at the end of the day, especially in B2B, there's so many solutions that are similar these days. It's quite unique to have a true blue ocean, if you will.
For
um,
long. Yeah.
so for very long. So you've got people are buying you along with the product, because if you take care of them during the sales process, they're going to translate that to be, hey, we're going to get taken care of once we're sold as well. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss, is that they're so busy trying to make sure that they just get through the steps that they forget to listen for a second and ask some of the harder questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question that's hard, that makes the other person go back and think for a minute. Because, hey, you're trying to solve problems. You're not just trying to sling whatever you're selling.
Yeah. And what made you a great rep? Because you moved up pretty quick.
Yeah, a growing company helps with that.
Sure does.
Being the first one makes life a lot easier as you're trying to climb that ladder. But I'm someone who I am unique, I guess, in my approach, at least from what I've been told, because I'm not necessarily the first one to speak at a table. In a room, yeah, love to work a room. But when I'm sitting down to actually give presentations, I do a lot of listening and a lot of, where's the actual issue coming from? Because a lot of times it seems like, oh, here's the easy reason why it is. And usually there's actually two reasons before that nobody else has really uncovered or taken the time to. And that is something that I really took a lot of time with, and made sure that I took care of I was always available, which it has its ups and downs, don't get me wrong, but it's sales. Like, at the end of the day, it's the easiest, lowest paying job, or the hardest, highest paying job you're ever going to have. And that's the way it is.
Was that the way you always were, or was that a particular skill you learned? Because learning the why behind the why.
Jeff instilled that in me a lot, admittedly. It was
Yeah.
always, did you ask this question? And you're always like, oh. So then it's like, it's ingrained to just ask questions just in case. Like, that is it took me a couple of years, and I'm still learning every day. Like, that's the other thing, is always be willing to learn more, but definitely asking those deeper questions. There's a lot of obviously great books, as you know, but also, just never taking things for surface. It's so easy to just say, oh, great, here's what you said you need, let me get that for you, versus saying, well, why do you think you need that? Like, what's driving that? Because there's so many times where a small little deal can turn into a much larger opportunity if you just keep digging. Yeah, it gets more complicated. sometimes, and there's more people involved. But at the end of the day, if you've turned a tiny thing into a big thing and you're solving a whole thing, it makes life easier for everybody in the long run once you dive in. And it's just, I used to be told, and then I learned to tell, that it's a little lazy to just take people for what they say.
Yes.
People don't inherently, I believe that people are good. They don't inherently lie to you, but there's things that they just don't know because they haven't thought of it. And it's your job to think of the things that they haven't thought of, because then they're like, oh, he's the expert. He's the one who's going to get me somewhere. That's how you build up a champion, and you have to have a champion in a deal.
Well, it does a lot of things. It shows interest in them, shows curiosity about their world.
Mhm.
And you're right, because a lot of people don't have the problem fully articulated. They have
Well,
a
I mean,
symptom.
especially the first person that you speak to, especially if they're reaching out to you, right? Because most people are doing research online and they're like, hey, call these guys, I need this. And then you talk to somebody and they're like, I don't know why they told me to get this. I'm like, well, let's dive into it for a second,
Yeah.
because what you're asking for makes almost no sense. Um, and I'm not afraid to say that anymore. There was a time when I was, but nowadays it's like, and don't be afraid, to say, I'm not the right solution. Like, this isn't going to be a fit for you, because at the end of the day, if they sign on and they're unhappy, or you don't
Who
solve the
they blame.
problem,
Yeah.
your reputation is now being hurt. Because we were industry focused, that was wildly important, because industries speak. Like, every industry thinks that they're unique because they're all, you know, uh, little bubbles, but they're mostly the same in that aspect of, like, they all kind of come together. There's a lot of co-opetition, especially in manufacturing and things. So when you're selling softwares and things into those, it's like your reputation is more important than one sale.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you're actually building the right solutions for people becomes more and more important for that reason.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you have a pretty common background that this I've seen the enterprise uh rent-a-car management role on a lot of people. I know they do a great job at college recruiting.
They do a great job at college recruiting.
Yeah. What did they do to keep people there more than a year?
Um,
Did you
I'm
like the
not,
structure or did you like the
I wasn't at enterprise.
no? I'm sorry. I was looking at someone else's.
I mean, they do a great job in recruiting. I'll give you that. Um,
But why did you get into sales?
I got, my move was a little bit different, just because I started in marketing. My
Yeah.
education's in marketing. And then I, believe it or not, had known Jeff from when I was a bartender and waiter during college.
Yeah.
And he found out that I'd moved to Chicago to get a job with a small marketing agency. And he called me one day and was like, hey, good people travel with good people. I'm looking to kind of take this business that I've been working on to the next level. Do you know anybody who'd be interested in doing kind of marketing and sales for a startup that I'm looking to run? And I thought about it, and I wasn't really digging what I was doing. It was a lot more numbers and a lot less talking, which wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
So I was like, why not me? And so I got into it, redid all the marketing in my first 6 months, and then continued to do sales as well. And we came to a point where it's like, hey, which path do you want to take? Sales or marketing? And I was loving being on the road and chatting with people. And so I moved into the sales side and admittedly never looked back. It was a really great fit for my personality.
But why did you study marketing in college? Was it just you liked business and it seemed interesting, or?
I initially was going to be a psychologist, believe it or not. And then I looked at, I'm not ashamed to say, I looked at the income potential and was like, maybe not. There's a lot of education for where this has to go to be what I wanted to be in the field. But then I took a business course and realized that marketing is the psychology of business. Like, that is kind of the crux of what it is. And so I got really interested in trying to figure out why people do what they do in a business sense. And so
It,
that was a good transition to sales as well.
so it must have helped in sales when I hear
Certainly.
like the industry focus, the influence, or putting stuff out there to start a conversation to get
Yeah.
awareness as
And
opposed to just cold calling.
the marketing side of it, I'm someone who's a big believer that marketing is just the first step in sales. And there's a lot of salespeople who and their marketing people kind of clash. And I'm like, you guys have to be lockstep if you really want to do things fast, because you guys are together and you have to be selling the same thing at this, at the end of the day. If you're not selling the same thing, it just slows everybody down. So I've always worked closely with my marketing
Yeah.
team, which was really helpful. And then I was fortunate. I went to Central Michigan, which they were one of the first schools to have a sales designated program underneath the marketing wing. So I took a few of the courses. I was a little late to get like the full degree in sales,
Yeah.
but I did take a few sales courses back before they were a little bit more widespread.
And what do you think salespeople don't get about marketing?
They think that, you know, it's the same argument, right? So all the marketing people are like, here's all the leads. And the salespeople are like, these are all bad leads. And so, there's so many times that salespeople think that marketing is just there to bring in leads. And really marketing's job is, not only getting the leads, but building all this collateral for you. Like they're filling up your tool belt. If you really want to get fun with it, you can think of Batman, right? Like his butler builds all these things that he carries on his belt, and that's the marketing team. And then the sales guy is the one who actually has to go out there and put his face on it, right? And like actually use these tools. And I think that nowadays there's this new world of sales enablement that's kind of growing up that takes over some of that.
Yeah.
But you still need marketing to build all this collateral. Like they're building and getting people interested. And the more work, the better job marketing can do, and the more you can support them early on, the faster your sales cycles are going to be, because most people are researching things anyway. And so they're the first person to give that slight bend on sales. Marketing is those, instant sales, like if that's what you're going to do. But then when you're building enterprise, they get that interest going, they can get you 60%. You got to take it the rest of the way home though and figure out what's going on.
Right. I think a lot of salespeople think if they get a lead, that person is in market, evaluating options, ready to talk. And I think they're probably interested in the ebook. Right?
Yeah. And hey, we all want leads like that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, in reality, sometimes they're just looking for the ebook. And sometimes it's good just to,
that's okay.
Stay in touch with people. I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me after 2 years and be like, hey, we were looking at this, we were working on 4 other things at the time, couldn't make it work. Can we circle back on that? And you're like, again. Of course. Yeah. And it's like, just those little things, and being able to work with your marketing team to build small, drip campaigns that can work in the background. Like, hey, just wanted to, every 6 months you've got that pile of leads. It's like, it was a timing situation, and I'll take it. That's fine. Right. Then I'll just keep you warm, but I'm not going to let you go completely, because then that's a waste of everybody's work.
Right. Because think about the last car you bought. It wasn't 2 weeks before you bought it. You probably started thinking about years ahead.
Yeah.
If I ever get a raise, if my current car breaks down.
You got to be in the right place at the right time in sales, and you can't be there if you're only looking at what's in front of you.
Right.
At
you're only out in the parking lot.
Right. And that's the another thing that, again, lazy sales, if you will, is just about, if you're playing a numbers game versus a building game, I would personally, to me, that's the lazy sales side of it. It's like, hey, if you're playing a numbers game, then you're not really working with people. You're not really an enterprise at that point. And right. There's a place for that. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not the world that I've played in.
Right. It's much more of a strategy game, a prioritization game, focusing on the most likely to be interested.
Mm-hmm. Especially in B2B, yes. We're not selling widgets. Right. You have to sell vision, and you have to sell value. You can no longer go out there and say, hey, well, I got this cool
price and availability.
Great. Somebody else will build it in 3 days, guaranteed. There's plenty of smart people out there that can do things. And as soon as you do it, they're going to be like, that's a great idea. I can do that.
Now, when you were managing reps, what do you wish you could just tell them? It would hurt their feelings, but it would save months or years of personal development. If you could just shake them and say, do this, or think like this, or stop doing this.
The biggest piece is stop trying to close people too soon. There's so often that you get on the phone and you're like, okay, so the signature, and it's like, wait, no, like, like give people a second. And if you're patient with them, don't get me wrong, you have to guide them, like you have to drive the process, but it doesn't have to be at the speed of light. And oftentimes, if you just stop for a second, listen to what they're telling you, they will tell you when and what they want to buy. And as soon as you can get them to tell you why they need you, you've won. But if you are always looking for that signature, and there's so many salespeople that I've worked with that just turn into used car salesmen, not to build, they just have a bad rap. I'm not building a new one for them, but and it's like, stop, throwing a discount in to close the deal. If it was about money, then this would be a different conversation. It's never actually about money. It's about, you didn't make them think that it was worth it. So stop trying to do things so fast and do them right. And that's the thing that trips a lot of people up, is they're so focused. And this is why I never had a monthly number, because I think that it forces reps to think that way, where you figure how long your sales cycle is and you build numbers around that and you work with people. And if you don't, they're going to turn into those people who at the end of every month are like, and everybody gets a call at the end of the month from whatever salesperson they've been talking to finalize the deal. And you need to find their timetable and work backwards from there. They're not going to fit into your timetable. What's their compelling event? Why do they need this done by this day? If you cannot tell me why they need it by this day, then you have not even come close to qualifying that as a sale for me. It could still close. I'm not saying it's not going to close. I'm just saying that you can't tell me when it's going to close, which means it's not really forecastable at that point.
And that's a great point, because they get pressure from the manager. They get their own internal pressure, and it seems like the easy way, but it's dumb. It kind of breaks the deal, breaks trust.
Certainly. When you start trying to sell somebody something just because you need to sell something, as opposed to selling them what they need. And this goes back to that asking, figuring out why they think they need something, because so many times you can build these deals. Someone's like I said, we were in photography. They're like, I've got 20 things that are coming out that I want to get shot. The laziest salesperson are like, great, let me sign you up for 20. Here's your price. Let's go. The others are like, 20. Okay. Do you have anything else? What's your kind of release schedule? And then all of a sudden they're like, well, yeah, we release 20 a quarter. Let's get you on a quarterly plan then, where you can ship them in. And all of a sudden you're solving problems for them that they didn't even know they had yet. And you've quadrupled your sale. And it took an extra 20 minutes. But, when I say taking your time, it's not necessarily stretching a sale for
Right. It's not slowing it down. It's just it's really understanding what you're working with.
Yeah. And so many times it seems like asking these deeper questions as the deal gets bigger, there's always that little piece of you that's like, did I go too far? I've got an extra person in here who now has to help make this decision. But it's like, yeah, but if your quota is X and you've tripled that deal, now there's 2 other deals you don't have to try to chase now. Yeah. And focusing in on those deals that are closable is so key. Sales is so much like spinning plates, right? You've got a bunch up there, but they don't all get your attention at the same time because they can't. But there's just enough attention until they're ready to go. And then you move. And that's the speed side of it. It's not necessarily, I got to close it in the next hour. It's, let me take an hour and 15 minutes, get this rapport built. And all of a sudden, the second call that you were going to have doesn't even have to happen, because they're like, no, you know what, you can take care of this. I you're fine.
Cool. Hey, Matt, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I am on LinkedIn, Matt Fowler. That's the easiest way to get to me. You will probably recognize the bald head in the photo. So that's the fastest way to get to me. Everything else on my social, fully admit, I cook a lot. So it's all just cooking stuff.